Hey everyone, this is Dr. Tumala from Trinergy Health, and today I have Angie here with me.
Hi.
Angie is our receptionist. She joined our organization about a month ago, and I am very happy to say that she's already become a very integral member of our growing team, and she um, has great ideas that we're already beginning to implement, and I'm really happy that she decided to join us. The reason I'm having Angie here is because her life story is also very inspiring. And I will let her describe exactly what her story is about. And people may say that this is a confirmation bias in operation here. I have certain views about this topic, and Angie's story kind of fits in nicely well into that worldview. And maybe that's why I'm making this video to impose my worldview onto all of you. Kidding, just kidding. No, I really think that this view of ours needs a little bit more attention and a look into. So what is this I'm talking about? It is about the issue of addiction, specifically opiate addiction, and the reasons for that, as well as the available treatment options. So when it comes to opiate addiction, unfortunately, we usually hear mainly about Suboxone and Methadone. I cannot say how many times I've heard on NPR stories about how Suboxone is such a helpful drug. And I am not disagreeing with that. I think it does work for a small group of people, but it is best used in a time-limited fashion. My personal experience as a physician has not been that medications like Suboxone and Methadone can help people fully experience sobriety and take back their lives. And and you know, her own experience has also been the same. And so I will pass it on to Angie to take it from here.
Thank you. So I am a recovering addict. I have been clean now for almost 2.5 years. Most of that time was spent in prison. But prior to that, I was addicted to opiates. With a lot of my previous surgeries and health concerns, I was overly prescribed a lot of painkillers, aka life killers. So I was overly prescribed, and then with my history of mental health, with depression, anxiety, and stuff like that, my brain just kind of really got addicted, and then my body got addicted. So potentially.
So were you using any other drugs before opiates?
I started on prescription painkillers, and then I went to heroin.
Okay. So it's not like you were shopping for these drugs before, although you had all these other issues like depression, anxiety, and
Correct.
chronic pain.
Yes.
Again, instead of getting to the root of the problem, you were given these fixers,
Correct.
temporary fixers, but with a lot of devastating consequences.
Yeah. And then it was, like I said, just overly prescribed. And then nobody really noticed my warning signs. It was just keep prescribing. And then potentially my addiction just spiraled out of control. And then when the doctors had cut me off of the painkillers was when you go through withdrawals. And then you start making really bad choices. And then a lot of stories that I hear, a lot of people go from painkillers to heroin. And the stories are so predominantly out there. It's just heartbreaking. But yeah, that's where my addiction had started.
Yeah, as many of you know, I grew up in India. My medical education was in India. I also did my psychiatry residency, my original one in India as well. And I was a practicing psychiatrist. The thing that really shocked me when I first came here, two things. One is that there was such a diverse of mind and body in the practice of psychiatry. And the second thing was the overuse of medications like benzodiazepines and opiates. 2005, I still remember I was working at the mental health complex crisis intervention, and a lady walks in. She had just been to Freighted ER for complaints of headache, and she was prescribed 90 Vicodin pills, which is hydrocodone, for a complaint of headache. And then she was over at psychiatric crisis service because she was anxious and she wanted me to prescribe her a month's supply of Xanax. And I refused to do that. And, all hell broke loose. I had a rapid education into some of the choicest words, but then, I saw this phenomenon happen over and over again. And as a young resident, new immigrant, I was very quiet in the beginning. But by the time I started my first job, after my residency and fellowship, I actually took a hard stance and I said, if someone's coming in for addiction problems, or even if it is just, chronic pain, I would encourage them to get off of these, because the way we practiced in India, it was drilled into me that opiates are highly, highly addicting. And we only use it in situations where a person is terminally ill. Those were the only conditions that or in acute surgical settings. Nobody was ever, even after post-operatively, nobody was given a prescription of opiates to take home. We just didn't practice it that way. So, and then, I began to talk about this with my colleagues, but and then 10 years down the lane, I started working in 2009 at this hospital, but I noticed this happening in 2005, that, and then a few years later, I think 10 years, by 2015, 2016, everyone's talking about the opiate epidemic. And my own personal feeling about it is that we as physicians, we have let down the community very hard, very badly. So then what happened, Angie?
Potentially I was only on Suboxone for short term, just to help with the withdrawals. I didn't want to be on it long term. I didn't want to be on methadone long term.
Why? What was your reasoning for that?
I felt like I was substituting one drug for another. And I felt like it just wasn't healthy for me. I wanted to try, especially when I got out of prison, I wanted to try a more natural, work on me, not just medicate me. I kind of wanted to try different things, especially with a lot of my health issues, try yoga, try meditation, just try anything that would help me kind of stay away from medications, because my history was I was always medicating myself.
So not really getting to the root of the problem.
Exactly.
And again, there is a role for some of these medications, especially in the short term. I mean, I think Suboxone can be used as an agent when somebody's withdrawing, and you can mitigate those withdrawal symptoms and help with that. We can for sure do that. But the concept of using Suboxone lifelong, or it just doesn't sit with me. And the very typical analogy that I give is that it's like, when you are addicted to something, it's almost like you're in a different medium. It's almost like you're living underwater, let's say. But sobriety is living on land. And if you want people to live on land or behave as if they're living on land, you first need to get them out of that medium, which is help their brains to function, to adapt to a life without any of these addicting substances. And so to me, from that philosophy, I can see Suboxone or methadone being used in short term to help people. But in the long run, we really need to get these people out of that water. You can't expect it, but keeping them on Suboxone or any of these medications long term is like putting them underwater and asking them to behave like as if they're on land. And taking this analogy further, when you've spent some time swimming and then you get onto hard land, it takes a while for your body to adjust to that difference. And it's the same thing. And with addiction, my personal experience is that the physiological addiction people recover within about, say, a month or so. But psychological addiction, and this has been talked about, it's called PAWS, post-acute withdrawal syndrome, really takes a couple of years. It takes that long. It does. And I think, for better or for worse, your time in prison really gave you that period to go through that without, being tempted with other things.
It did. I mean, at first when I was sentenced to go to prison, I was upset. I was angry. I was extremely angry. But as time went on, it's what I needed. I've been to treatment facilities, and I'm a firm believer that a lot of things happen at certain times of our life, and you have to be ready. At that time, when I was maybe a couple months into prison, it hit me, and I'm like, okay, I can do this. Being in a prison setting and having that structure, it really kickstarted my sobriety. So,
although as a physician, I will say that I'm not in favor of patients dealing with addiction, prison should not be their only option.
Yeah.
In fact, we need to have that kind of a setup, not a punitive setup, but a collaborative care setup in the outside world. I mean, in the real world, not in the prison setting.
Yeah.
Where the structure, the avenues of help that you receive, yoga, meditation, therapy, all of these things are made available for a longer period of time, not just for a month or 2 months. That just creates a revolving door kind of a situation. People come in, people go out. It really takes consistent effort to do that. And that is something that unfortunately we don't have accessible to everyone. And so by default, we look to our prison systems to help us in this, which is, that's very sad.
Yeah, and there's the statistics and the number of women and men sitting in prison. Majority of them are because of either drug-related offenses or, I've met so many different addicts in prison, and it's the same story over and over again.
Yeah. And my biggest disappointment with psychiatry is that we don't talk enough about naltrexone. It's an opiate antagonist. It blocks the opiate receptors without having any inherent opiate effect. So that's the big difference between Suboxone and naltrexone. And I have used, so once I decided that I wasn't going to use Suboxone, even though I had the license, again, the big reason was that I was noticing that people were actually abusing Suboxone. That was my observation from my inpatient clinical days. And within a few months after I got my Suboxone license and seeing this, I decided not to prescribe Suboxone anymore. And any, whether it's their good fortune or misfortune, if any patient with opiate addiction ended up being assigned to me in the hospital, I would talk to them about naltrexone. And within a week or so, I would monitor them, get them off of the, help them with the withdrawals, which you can do very safely with naltrexone, especially in the inpatient setting. And I must say, I've had the fortune of working with only one patient with addiction in this outpatient practice. And even with that gentleman, we used naltrexone in the outpatient setting. And and he is doing well.
Yeah.
He has been able to turn his life around after years of addiction. But it takes work. It takes our trust in people. It's recognizing that addiction, and this is something that I heard from Russell Brand, and please listen to his podcast, about mental health and addiction. I think he really is making some good points there. And Russell Brand put it the best. He said addiction is a placeholder for connection, which is what I would say mental illness in general is an expression for this need for connection that we have, that we need with one another as well as with nature. It is a disconnection from natural rhythms, from humanity, that I believe is the number one reason why we are seeing this explosion of not only addiction issues, but also mental illnesses. This is from a psychological point, and many of you who know me know that my other big focus of interest is healing the body, the physiology of the body. That is also very important. But the psychological root causes, if I were to talk about one thing, I would say it's that we are looking for love, we're looking for meaning, and we're looking for connection. Yeah. This is meaning and purpose is especially lost when we go down the path of addiction.
And I think a lot of it takes patience, because especially being an addict, you're looking for that instant gratification.
We all are.
Yeah.
Let's not go down how many times I wanted to shop. I mean, that, whether it is binge eating, whether it is shopping, and, so the consumeristic tendencies that I had picked up, was a way to soothe the something, that feeling of lacking.
Getting
that I was
instant
having.
Gratification, yeah.
Yes, it is very gratifying. But it's all about training the frontal lobe. Yes. So, and for us, Angie, I do want to tell you that when you called us and you were very upfront about, your history, my husband and I, we both were, really wanting to, give you this opportunity, and we're so glad we did. But the point I wanted to tell you is that we are not doing you a favor. I want you to know, you are here because you've proved yourself. So it's just that I think probably because of my experience in working with people with addiction.
Yeah.
I think I've trained myself to not look at only that. That's not your whole story, is what I'm saying. So you're here because you deserve to be.
Thank you.
And thank you for everything that you're doing.
I appreciate it. I like to think that even though they're addicts, we make bad choices, but we're not bad people.
Exactly.
And we just need a chance.
That's exactly what you put it really well. That's exactly what I wanted to say. It's that you have to look beyond some of these choices. I mean, hey, you know, I've made mistakes. I've hurt people too. All right. Well, this is what we had to share with you today. Thank you for your time. And if you have any questions or comments, do send them over to us. And if you're looking for a more holistic way to help your mental health issues or any physical health issues, we treat everything here between Dr. Sunita Pandey and myself. We covered the gamut of illnesses that people are afflicted with. Give us a call. Our phone number is 262-955-6600. Bye-bye.
Bye.